We've been actively building the BSC ecosystem for the past few years. Alongside our community, we have grown closer to progressive decentralization. And now, we welcome you to a new era. Today, Binance Smart Chain becomes BNB Chain. With these major improvements, BNB Chain will embrace large-scale applications, including GameFi, SocialFi, and the Metaverse. This is just the beginning. BNB means build and build. As for what BNB Chain is, that's for you to define. The possibilities are endless. Own one BNB to own a key to the future. BNB is beyond Binance.
Yes, you've heard it right. Binance Smart Chain is now BNB Chain. Open, not closed. Multi-chain, not one chain. Decentralized, not centralized. Creators and builders, not destroyers. Inventors, not followers. And innovators, not blockers. BNB Chain is now more than ever ready to develop the tools and network to support mass transfers of data, assets, and to send crypto towards its first 1 billion crypto users. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. My name is Gwendolyn, and I'm the Investment Director of BNB Chain Fund. I'm pleased to welcome all of you today to this first live stream of BNB Chain. So I'm honored to have with me here leading entrepreneurs, investors, and ecosystem pioneers in this panel with me. So first up, we have CZ, founder and CEO of Binance, Jim Breyer, founder and CEO of Breyer Capital, Shaikh, co-founder of Stealth Chain, Sammy, BNB Chain coordinator, and myself. So today's panel discussion is titled BNB Chain, Building Beyond. But beyond what? So let's kick it off. Maybe for Sammy and CZ, what inspired this rebrand to BNB Chain? CZ, maybe you can kick it off. Yeah, it started with you, right?
Sure. I think for many years, people always think of Binance Smart Chain because it carries the Binance word, and people think of it as something owned by Binance. And we have done a lot of work to decentralize it. And we also realized that now BNB is beyond Binance. It's bigger than Binance. We call it build and build. I've tweeted many times. I tweeted a few times before. BNB is its own living, breathing ecosystem together with now what we call the BNB Chain. So we want to stress this term, and we want to actually de-emphasize Binance going forward. So that's really the reason behind this rebranding.
Thank you, CZ. How about Sammy? You've been leading the growth of the BNB Chain ecosystem over the last year or so, and so what inspired from your point of view?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think really when we started off, we definitely didn't expect BSC and now BNB Chain to grow to where it was today. But I think it just showed the level of underserved demand there really was. And this type of infrastructure really helped to drive massive new user growth in decentralized applications that wasn't really happening before. So at the time, we didn't really think about the name too much, and we didn't really think about that aspect of it because it was really just an experiment. Definitely our imagination at the time wasn't enough to think about where we would be right now, but I think the timing now is really appropriate and reflects more about the future technology roadmap and what we're aiming to achieve now that we have reached the position that we have after this journey of 18 months since the launch of BSC and now BNB Chain.
So, at the beginning of the video, we showed some commonly kind of lobbied like arguments against Binance Smart Chain, now BNB Chain, right? So what is the relationship between previously what we called Binance Smart Chain, now BNB Chain, and Binance? I know, CZ, you kind of talked about a little bit about that again, but does Binance own like Binance Smart Chain, now BNB Chain?
Yeah, so that's a very common misconception we get because it's called Binance Smart Chain. People think Binance controls it, Binance owns it, and in turn I control it to some degree. So BNB, as Sammy was saying before, it was a experimental project. Well, Binance Smart Chain was now called BNB Chain. It was an experimental project that we initially contributed to. We funded, we helped the initial funding of it, But now it's a community-driven project. It's open source. It is decentralized, and Binance does not control BNB Chain. And so we want to make this distinction really clear. So Binance is just a contributor in this community, and we'll continue to contribute our resources and our efforts to it. But BNB and BNB Chain is completely running on its own, and it's not controlled by us or anyone else. And we want to push this, continue to push to make it more and more decentralized.
Thank you, CZ. Yeah, and also a few months ago, at the kickoff of BNB Chain's kind of 2022 that Sammy and I actually presented, we talked a lot about the multi-chain future. So BNB Chain is now even supporting that even more. So I want to use this to kind of transition to also Jim, right? Jim and Mo. So both Jim and Mo, you've been huge pioneers in the ecosystem. Jim yourself across the Web 2 world, now also Web 3 world over the last 8 years or so. And Mo, yourself, you've been building. So how about both of you? When you look at the ecosystem now, what does the multi-chain world mean to you?
Well, I'll start off from an investment and venture capital standpoint, and I can't imagine a time that's more exciting. I've been very lucky and fortunate to work with really outstanding entrepreneurs. I met Mark Zuckerberg when he was 20 and invested in Facebook in 2005. I was able to get to know Steve Jobs very well. Steve gave me my very first job back in the day at Apple. I've worked with Andy Grove and a series of other great entrepreneurs. And CZ is one of those entrepreneurs that comes along maybe once or twice in a generation. And so I'm thrilled to be an investor. As well, I think we're just at the beginning of what the multi-chain will mean. We hear a lot about the metaverse. In fact, the multi-chain as a set of building blocks will be essential for the metaverse. I think gaming, of course, has been where most of the action has been, and it will continue to be very significant. And Breyer Capital has made 4 or 5 investments in Niantic and a series of other gaming companies such as Epic, which we believe are precursors to where we're going. But what I really like about where we are today, this is all about the development community rallying around really important multi-chain architectures. And the great companies of the future will be decentralized and will find ways to enable developers to knock it out of the park. And that's what's really exciting about this series of announcements and what CZ is leading along with the team.
Thank you, Jim. And Mo, you're muted. That's our favorite, again, like work from home word.
There you go. Of course, there's going to be someone, and of course, it was me. Thanks for that question. And it's certainly interesting, and I very much agree with Jim. Right, the space is quite young, although it has matured over the last 10 years. There are lots of interesting ideas. There are chains that have been out there that have been battle tested. I think BNB is one of those. There are new chains that have come that have interesting use cases that they're pursuing, including ours. But I think the thing we think about when we focus on a multi-chain future is the foundation. And that foundation starts with thinking about the languages for things like smart contracts, blockchain infrastructure that then helps kind of solve for the developer experience, and the bridges that basically then connect both the developer experience and the on-chain state. So these are, I think, the sort of factors to pay attention to when you're really solving for a multi-chain future. As an L1 blockchain, infrastructure and ecosystem entity, we're going to be investing in what we believe is the most important audience. It's the developer, and those on-chain interactions have to be as easy as possible for code and state to basically move across various networks. That's not easy to do. That's where we need the ecosystem and the various stakeholders to really come together. And that doesn't just mean builders, but it also means capital. So it's great. Jim's kind of thinking about it. This is where we see the collective vision with the BNB team. this is where we're really aligned on our mission, right? We want to create that developer experience and make it as seamless as possible. And that's the only way we'll be able to get to that multi-chain universe, right? And building these tools, building these bridges, and all these sort of components isn't going to be easy work. It's going to require collective effort with different stakeholders, but that's where we're really excited to partner with someone like BNB and the team. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thanks, Mo. Yeah, we're excited to partner with you as well. And Mo, you mentioned something interesting, right? So we talked about multi-chain, but there's also a lot of debate with cross-chain. You kind of talked about, like bridging and stuff like that. So where do you sit on this debate between multi-chain and cross-chain? Some don't think it kind of really matches.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. So I think there are chains that are already solving for different use cases based on the unique attributes and the value prop that they bring to the table. It's a trade-off between speed, security, and then sometimes other components. We've seen sort of developers move towards different chains with different tooling sets as well. Those multiple chains exist already. So we are in a multi-chain world. In order for those multiple chains to really be accretive with each other, there needs to be bridges. There needs to be interoperability. There needs to be a lot of technical collaboration. That's where I think about these bridges and this tooling to work together quite nicely. The challenge, though, of course, is one of a technical one, which is driven by humans, of course, where there are different languages for these different chains. So this is where a lot of the hard work sits, where you may want to compile down to EVM, you may want to compile down into a Rust-based language or other languages, and that's perfectly fine. But in order to execute across that, you have to keep in mind safety. You need to keep in mind security and reliability. There are still challenges in this ecosystem, given it's still developing. And in order for those bridges to be built, they have to be battle tested. And that's, again, where I think it'll be exciting to work together with you guys, where we can battle test those bridges in a way that we feel safe, that our parents and our family members and people that don't have deep technical expertise can basically build use cases that span across multiple chains and don't have to focus on just one audience. That is where a lot of the value will come. And so one last point to mention here is, these technical issues are, again, focused for developers, right? We want developers to just be able to quickly pick up and go, right? They shouldn't have to worry whether this bridge is the right bridge to use, whether this layer 2 solution is the right one to use. We want to give that confidence, and that's where, again, it's our responsibility, right, wrong, or indifferent, to make sure we build the best tools possible. So hopefully that answers the question behind multi-chains and interoperability and bridges.
Yeah, for sure. The bridges is something that Sammy also has been working a lot on. Sammy, do you have any comments on this multi-chain and cross-chain future, and where does BNB Chain sit in that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think this is a emerging trend. So it's really in the last year that we've seen significant adoption from both developers as well as users across a number of different layer 1s, but also the emerging layer 2 ecosystem. So along with that, there is going to be a period for development of the core infrastructure, along with bridges and other types of infrastructure that will enable developers to start building truly multi-chain and cross-chain applications. So I imagine soon there will be DeFi applications that will allow users to collateralize assets on one chain and issue a loan on another chain, and also enable efficient cross-chain liquidation. So that kind of thing isn't really happening today, but the core infrastructure we're starting to see emerge today that will allow for developers to start experimenting with these type of applications. So that's one example in the DeFi space. In gaming, it could be other types of things that allow users more flexibility. So for example, NFTs or the game assets to be able to have the flexibility to move across different chains, and users will be able to trade them on their favorite NFT marketplace, whichever chain that's on, but in a way that allows those game assets to be still used inside the game and enable or allow persisting state changes on the NFT regardless of which chain that's on. So also that's like not really happening today yet, but I think that's coming very soon based on the great innovation and development that's happening with interoperability and bridge technologies.
Thanks, Sammy. So Mo and Sammy has mentioned the word build several times, and CZ earlier you mentioned, right? You've tweeted about it. BNB is like build and build, right? So how do you see this building, landscape changed over the last year? We've seen more developers build, right? How about the future?
Yeah, I think for Multichain. Well, first of all, I want to thank Jim for comparing me even to like Mark Zuckerberg. You should have seen me when I was 22. It'd be quite different. So I think in a decentralized world, it's almost guaranteed to be multi-chain. Because anybody can build a blockchain, and they will. And as Mo and Sammy have alluded to, there's different use cases. There's different situations you may want to use different chains. There's different technical solutions that's available. And from an investment point of view, Breyer Capital will be investing in multiple projects, etc. It doesn't make sense for there to be only one project to invest in. Not every project needs their own chain. Some projects can issue a token and be okay with it, but there are cases where different applications will use different technologies, and more. There's also another incentive side of it. A blockchain, a new coin, is a unit of measure. It's one ecosystem. There's incentive alignments when you use one coin or one token. Together with your users, with your founding team, etc. So that's also only possible when you issue a new coin. But again, issue a new coin doesn't necessarily mean a new chain. But that's guaranteed to be that we already have multiple chains. And Binance, as decentralized exchange, is extremely neutral to blockchains. We support many different type of blockchains, including BNB Chain now and other chains in the future. And I want to point out, BNB is one of those very few coins that's actually native coin on multiple chains. There's a Binance chain, which is actually a little bit older. People still use it. There's a DEX running on it. And there's now the BNB chain. So we want to, it's also possible to have one coin running as the native coin on multiple blockchains. And that's something we want to continue to promote. Today, if some developer comes to me and says, "CZ, I can build another new chain, and we can use BNB as a native coin," and they may need some funding from us, some help from us, we probably, if we believe in that vision, we probably will be very willing to fund it. So again, we don't control that blockchain. It will be an open source, open community-driven blockchain. And so I think we will see many blockchains running BNB and other coins, and we'll see a very diversified ecosystem, and that's really important for innovation. If everyone just stick to one chain, that's actually less innovation. We're so early in the industry. We got to see multiple people. We got to promote and support multiple people developing multiple blockchains, and that way, different technologies, sharding, EVMs, there's multiple different attempts to conquer some of the technical challenges we have today, and that will make the industry grow faster. So that's very necessary.
Thanks, CZ. Yeah, you mentioned capital and investments. Jim obviously is like the expert here, especially on this panel. So Jim, in this multi-chain world, I believe you agree, but feel free to disagree or add more nuance to what the other panelists have said. How has it, like this BNB chain rebrand, how does it affect the landscape of the chains out there, and how does it affect your investment strategy?
Well, this is a case where I violently agree with my fellow panelists. Interoperability across the chains is absolutely key, and there won't be millions of chains. There will be a small number of very important chains that will need to be bridged rather than treated as silos, if I have to predict. Very similar to what the world of platforms might have been like in Web 2.0. What is really exciting about this announcement is that tokenomics, in some cases for developers, is exactly the right way to go. But what I've seen with my experience in the Circle and Coinbase ecosystems, there's some developers that raise money if you will, through the tokens, but 6 to 12 months later don't have the advice, don't have the mentorship that we in the venture capital business and Binance can provide. And so that hybrid set of skills and treating developers the way they may want to evolve their business, I think is really critical. Let me also add, I have never seen this much absolutely top Silicon Valley and technical talent enter a specific industry. Not a day goes by here in Silicon Valley or elsewhere where there isn't a great small number of developers out of Google, out of Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook. I could go on. And these are the best of the best that have decided that they are going to develop on top of the blockchain and take this view of interoperability. And the talent is immense. These are people who could go do anything. I spend a lot of time in artificial intelligence and quantum, and there are some really interesting applications around AI and quantum as applied to what Binance is doing. These developers are absolutely world-class, and they're leaving the best of the companies, call it the FANG stocks plus, to do startups in and around the multi-chain world. And so that, as an investor and a venture capitalist, obviously gets me very, very excited. And we as venture capitalists bring a certain set of skills, but Binance, through its sets of skills, are not only very complementary, but I would say in most cases, even more important than what we bring as investors and venture capitalists.
So Jim, I'm going to put you on the spot. Have you looked at any projects that have built on BNB Chain?
Absolutely. And we're currently looking at several. And I would say that there are existing investments. I was very lucky in 2013 to lead the Series A investment in Circle. And through my partners, we invest in the Series A in Coinbase in 2013. If I just focus on Circle for a moment, Circle is focused on being a multi-chain USDC. And with a chain like what BNB offers, there's absolutely no doubt a leading company like Circle will intensify its efforts in and around BNB Chain. And I see that in a number of the really interesting crypto companies that we've invested in around the world. More news to come.
Yeah, excited to see more of that. Maybe we can go to thesis, right? Because we talk about different use cases and stuff like that. So maybe I can go to Mo for you first. For your stealth chain, is it a particular thesis that you focused on? Because this stealth chain is very broad, Mo.
Yeah, I mean, without getting too nerdy here and thinking about talking about consensus mechanisms, but serving the market, right? Like when you look at the universe of all the L1s out there, and the Web2 market demand, there aren't enough L1s out there to cover all that volume. So, you know, if we are going to read the signals of that Jim pointed out, you know, there is this kind of mass migration. There's this excitement around Web3. The use cases are becoming more interesting. Business models are evolving. Well, then you're going to need a lot more throughput and support from an infrastructure perspective at the L1 level. What we've seen today is, you know, some very old L1s that have not evolved. We've seen some very interesting L1s that have evolved. And I think it's obviously a very exciting time for BNB here to solve for these core problems around throughput, latency, scalability, and future-proof sort of components. The folks that have been solving those issues are a lot of the L2s. And that's awesome. That's great, but it's not a good long-term solution necessarily. We do think L2s are very, very valuable in the ecosystem, but it shouldn't be their weight to lift or their responsibility fully to solve the L1's problems, which is where, you know, we think coming in makes a lot of sense. You know, we're thinking about reliability as kind of the core of what we built. Going back to my previous employers days where I was at Meta, we thought about this very thoughtfully, where, you know, if someone like Meta was to bring billions of users onto an L1, well, probably would be the end of that L1. So it's really important that folks like yourselves and BNB create this responsible ecosystem. We're thinking about it from our perspective, but going back to the theme of having this interoperability and this multi-chain sort of compatibility, that is essentially what's going to allow for Web2 to really come over. I think Jim also brought up a few good points that are slightly tangential that I do want to touch on. It's not just a technical solution. There are very important on-off ramps. And in a world where various stakeholders, everyone from users to governments are thinking about how to support this ecosystem, you need someone like Circle, you need stable coins, you need thoughtful governance at the native token layer. And we think BNB, I believe BNB does a great job of solving for some of these utility components, right? You want active participation. And that's just as important because that's what's ultimately going to allow these L1s to be successful in the future. It's going to be the support of the various stakeholders and their involvement, their governance, and their active engagement. And that's really, really important to the success of the Web3 ecosystem.
Yeah, I love the talk about migration indeed, right? And something in the video that there's some keywords in the video, doing the rebranding video, was GameFi, SocialFi, and Metaverse. So Sammy, maybe on to you, bridging the use case question. How will BNB Chain embrace these large-scale applications?
That's a good question. So we've been thinking a lot about that. And I think our experience over the last 18 months with scaling BSC infrastructure and supporting a large number of diverse range of use cases, we've seen that BSC is like a general purpose chain, right? So it's housing a lot of DeFi applications, gaming applications, social applications, and so many others. But really for applications to be able to scale to tens of millions and eventually hundreds of millions and then 1 billion users, we need to think quite differently about the type of chain architectures that will be able to support that type of growth. So we want to be able to provide choice for developers to be able to experiment on highly scalable infrastructure. So our technology roadmap in this year is going to be focused in 2 areas. So one is application chains. So these are going to be EVM compatible chains with bridges to BNB chain. Think of them as like a mini BNB chain. So they'll look very similar. They might have some different configurations in terms of the number of validators in the validator set. The transaction fees could be significantly lower, like small fractions of 1 cent. Maybe the same block production speed time. But those types of chains will be obviously more well suited for gaming applications. But the benefits for the game developers is being able to manage the scaling in a much more controlled fashion. So right now for projects that are built on the shared infrastructure, they don't really have much visibility on what's happening in terms of user growth on other applications that are on the chain. They usually find out about like very significant growth happening in other places once it's a little bit too late. But if in these application side chains, some of them will be permission, so only whitelisted addresses can deploy contracts there. So from the developer's perspective, can manage the scaling and especially the infrastructure scaling and ultimately the end user experience, ensure that that's really awesome in a way that's much more controlled. So that's one of the technology initiatives that's happening now, and the developer community can look forward to seeing the first of these application chains being rolled out in approximately 2 to 3 months from now. So it's coming very soon. In mid to long term for this year, so 6 months plus, we'll be rolling out the BNB partition chains. So these are very similar to the sharding strategy that's being followed by a number of other ecosystems. So the exact technical architectures of these will be sharing with the community in the coming months. There's a lot of community feedback that's coming into the drafts of these architectures right now, but at a high level, that's what the technology roadmap looks like and what the BNB chain community and developer community can look forward to.
Thank you, Sammy. So apart from that, I know that many events kind of lined up. Right? Can you talk a little bit more about what else is new for BNB Chain and how can people look to getting more involved from an events perspective?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff happening. We've got the Binance Blockchain Week coming up. BNB Chain will be having its own events alongside the Binance Blockchain Week. We have a lot of online events happening as well. There's a ton of news coming out soon. I can share share some sneak preview on some of them here. So we've already launched or we've already announced our technology roadmap, which I shared some insights about just now. We also rolled out recently the NFT metadata standards, um, which will look at improving a lot the NFT landscape as well as game development using these new NFT metadata standards, which will also support over time interoperability and cross-chain functionality. Um, the other thing that we're launching this week is the BNB Chain DeFi League. So this is a community of the leading BNB Chain DeFi projects that will be coordinating around key opportunities and challenges to accelerate user growth as well as significantly drive new liquidity growth in the BNB Chain DeFi ecosystem, as well as drive new innovation in the DeFi space as well. Alongside that, we've got other significant milestones coming very soon. So we can also look forward to some significant updates around CDeFi integrations that are going to be happening soon. So I can't share too much about that now, but that will open up a lot of new user growth. So it's basically going to allow Binance.com users to be able to access BNB Chain DeFi applications without having to custody their own keys. So obviously that's a big challenge and it's not accessible for a lot of users. That's definitely a major friction point and user experience challenge because it is difficult for users to be able to securely generate their keys and seed phrases and secure them throughout their life as well from the point of generation. So leveraging these type of CDeFi integrations will significantly increase the number of new users in decentralized applications, starting with DeFi, but eventually expanding to gaming, SocialFi, Metaverse, and many other areas as well afterwards. So
Towards
that's a
1 billion
small,
users.
exactly. So that's a small sneak peek at stuff that's coming up. So we've got a lot of events coming, a lot of great news coming very
Yeah.
soon that the community can be excited about.
Yeah, CDFI is something that CZ you've mentioned several times, right? In across the years. So I would love for you to kind of speak a little bit about that, about how CDFI, and maybe you can share more. Maybe Sammy is not revealing, but maybe you can or not. So you try to pick different people. But yeah, what can you say about CDFI in this new world?
Sure. I want to review as much as I know, but I don't know that much. So actually, when Sammy mentioned the BNB petition chain, this is actually the first time. Literally, this is the first time I heard about this term. Sam, he interacts with the community. He doesn't bother, to teach me stuff, and talking to me is a waste of time anyway. So, but that's good. Like that's the community just driving on their own initiatives, and what we can do really is to help from the CeFi side, because now we do have the largest CeFi platform by most metrics. By most metrics, we're 10, 20x bigger than the next guy. The bridging, there's DeFi bridges, but there's also CeFi bridges. So there's many new users are still more comfortable with an email and a password, and so for those guys, we can help them bridge that, different chains, cross chain, etc. I think Binance.com provides one of the largest bridges. And we also encourage people to use their own wallets. In addition to BNB Chain, we also have Trust Wallet, which is a decentralized self-custody wallet, which for the people who know how to control their own private keys, we actually encourage that. So we offer people more solutions. The other thing we do very strongly is funding. So we like to give the developers the freedom and the community the choice of which direction, which technology they choose to go to. Samuel talked about a lot of that, and actually I don't have nearly the same level of insight even. but that's good. Like, they should they should do their own thing. But we can help at least provide some of the funding, and we can help them raise money. We can also help them give them liquidity for projects that's on BNB Chain, BNB itself, and especially on projects that's using BNB Chain. Integrating them on Binance.com is super easy. We don't have to do any wallet development work. It's like a couple lines of configuration, and we turn it on. And then it fits into our security infrastructure. It's very easy to turn on. And we can give them liquidity. We can also help them, even some projects, to do their token economic designs, because with Binance listing, we have certain criteria or certain things we like to see. For example, we encourage founders to have a 10-year unlocking schedule instead of a two-year unlocking schedule. That's why we know the founders are we and the community know the founders are locked into this project, at least in the long term. And we believe that protect users. So we can help advise some of those structures from the beginning before they even issue their project, they issue their token. And this way, it gets a lot easier when we have to list them, if we have that sort of a history built up. So there's many things we can do on the sort of token liquidity, and also a number of users, branding, marketing. So we have a strong engine. We have one of the largest user bases in this space. So we can help on those sides. But whereas like the technology, the development, the direction of BNB Chain should be community driven, which is good. Like I try not to look too much into it, to be honest. But I'm very but of the people that, of course, I interact with a lot of people. Of the people I interact with, they're super strong. That's what I care about. We want to help smart people and give them a lot of freedom to do what they want to do, and not what I can't even imagine what they should be doing.
Yeah, thanks, CZ. Thank you for the 1 billion growth fund, which I am leading to invest in depth to build the BNB chain ecosystem. So thank you for that. Yeah, we've invested for our viewers. We've invested in over 50 other projects over the last year and a half. So we still have a lot of capital to distribute. So we are looking for interesting projects. And on that point, actually, Mo, I'm interested. How are you going to kickstart dApps building on your chain? Because you mentioned earlier, there's a lot, you kind of alluded to the difficulty or challenges of building, you're starting a new L1, right? How are you thinking of kickstarting way more, apart from working with partners like us?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I guess I'm just going to pile on to what CZ said. So this might sound a little redundant, but I'll say it in my own words. I think community is absolutely important. And I think the points that CZ mentioned around the support that's needed for these new market entrants. And so let me take a step back. So there's kind of the Web3 community that's already building. Those folks are smart. They understand token economics. They understand the infrastructure. They understand the components, and are able to sort of move the use cases that they're focused on along their journey. They're now probably looking at how to make that user experience as seamless as possible. Wallet experiences, Trust Wallet's great. Are paths to making that solution easier. I think there's still challenges from a user experience perspective in terms of how users themselves are thinking about managing self-custodying, and how truly they are interested in full-on decentralization, or is it a spectrum, and is it and where are we going to land on that spectrum? That's the Web3 world. The Web2 world that's now entering, which are billions of users, probably hundreds of millions of developers. How do we help them enter the space safely and responsibly, and get them going as quick as possible? One of those is obviously from the technological perspective, which we talked about, good tooling, getting the infrastructure set up, and that will continue to advance through our efforts individually and collectively. But it doesn't stop there. These are new business models. Not everyone is an economist, a computer scientist, and can think about user experience all in one hat. We're not even talking about legal and regulatory components. But that's what makes this space very, very exciting. But it also is upon us again to provide guidance on hey, these are best practices. A 10-year lockup period. I think that sounds like a lot, CZ, so I'm going to push back a little bit on the 10-year thing, but maybe 7 is feasible. But
better than most, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. Right? Some people might want to see 10. Some people might want to see more than that or less than that. But this is the dialogue that I think we need to have with founders, and we want to listen to them and help them, very quickly ramp up their business models and their use cases that they want to pursue. I think we'll have to collaborate with these with the Web2 folks is going back to a very simple starting point. You know, why are you entering Web3? What problem are you trying to solve that does not get solved in the Web2 world? And it's almost simple as that, which is the question that I often ask folks. You know, why are you interested in building on top of a blockchain? What can we do for you, or what can this ecosystem do for you that, you know, working with a large conglomerate or closed or walled gardens will not solve for? And it often becomes this like very grassroots, community-driven problem that we're all solving for, which is great. It all comes down to the people. It all comes down to you know, focusing on the end user, which is amazing. And the more we can do that, the more we can be problem focused. I think we'll be able to build really good problems and get that flywheel going very, very quickly. So that's what I think about. Like the problem set is exactly what I think about when I think about getting this flywheel started and thinking about those the proper sort of support to get not only the tech going, but also the business components of things.
I think that's so well said. If I may, just what CZ and Mo and Sammy have described. When we think about it, in Web 1.0 and 2.0, there were fundamental new business models that occurred, and the lion's share of the market capitalization went to companies pursuing those new business models. There's a great deal of technical support, as we talked about in this multi-chain world, that needs to occur, which is really significant. And there are only a handful of companies around the world that can do that. But the new business models are going to be ones where a great deal of creativity combined with pattern recognition and expertise is important. And just last week, I spent quite a bit of time with the head of partnerships at Instagram, and we were talking about NFTs, and we were talking about what does it mean for a journalist or a creator or a wonderful screenwriter, novelist, to be thinking about NFTs and what that might look like in terms of investment and then business model. And part of the promise of the internet 20 years ago, and also as social kicked in, was to allow creators and developers to participate very significantly in the quality of their work and the creative. And I'm very optimistic that in this new Web 3.0 world, there will be far more opportunity for the creative communities around the world to actively participate in a lot of the economics if they're creating wonderful, again, beautiful products. There will be a way for those creators to get more compensation than ever before.
So Jim, 7 or 10?
I like 10, but I also understand that sometimes it's worth splitting the difference. I for sure don't think it's 4 or 5, which we see in a lot of cases. And even the great companies take 7 to 10 years to evolve into something very significant. So I side with CZ on this one. I like 10, but I understand what Mo's describing, so I can appreciate nuances of difference.
I was going to jump in and say linear or logarithmic.
Linear is better for the founder. Logarithm is like way heavy loaded on the end. It's actually much better for the investor, but much worse for the founder.
Well said.
Well said. Yeah, so let's go on to Sammy. Back to Sammy. Sammy, I know you have an announcement to make.
Yeah, so we have several. So I touched upon briefly about the BNB Chain DeFi League. So we're launching the BNB DeFi League. So the BNB DeFi League comprises of key projects from the BNB Chain DeFi ecosystem that are going to be collaborating around opportunities as well as challenges around how to really drive new user growth and liquidity growth. So we'll be sharing more details about that. We'll be running a number of events this week as well. With the first one, it will be on Thursday, and we'll be sharing a lot more details about that with the community in the coming days.
Awesome, and I hear there's also a foundation. Plans for foundation.
Yes, that's right, Gwen. So we're also going to be launching the BNB Foundation. So the BNB Foundation is still currently under establishment. So it's being registered as a not-for-profit organization. So basically, BNB Foundation is going to be focused on supporting technical research and innovation around the development of crypto as well as blockchain-related technologies. So the BNB Foundation will be collaborating with the top tier higher education and research institutions across the world around addressing issues around scalability and a number of other technical challenges that we'll look to collaborate around supporting.
Amazing. Okay. So I think we have questions from the floor. So we do have, we're going to pick some questions now to answer live from all of you. But while we're waiting for the questions, maybe Sammy, you can talk a little bit more about how can a BNB chain and BNB community get involved, in the development of this BNB foundation?
Yeah, so good question. So follow us on Twitter, and also you can go to buildandbuild.dev. It's our site for the developer community. You'll be able to find all the links there, as well as forum, get engaged with our community around discussions happening on a wide variety of different topics. So head over to buildandbuild.dev, and you'll find our site there.
Perfect. Thank you, Sammy. So we do have our first question here. So, earlier, like several of you, I think maybe all of you mentioned security, right? So the first question we have here that we've pulled out from the many questions is, are you going to do something to save investors/investments from rug pulls?
I can take this if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So I think on this topic, it's a question that comes up a lot, right? So and BNB Chain is a public permissionless infrastructure. So any developers can deploy contracts there. That's the innovators as well as the malicious actors, right? So there isn't really much that can be done to stop that from happening. But I think the key point here is really about user education. There are technology solutions and others that the security community is exploring, but ultimately user education is one of the key things here, educating users around how to evaluate projects and risk, as well as risk control and risk management. I think that's one of the real key challenges as we move into these decentralized world. That decentralization does come with kind of the malicious actors being able to also use that infrastructure without being able to kind of any other parties or third parties being able to prevent it. So I think ultimately user education is one of the key aspects around that.
Very cool. Thank you. So the second question. This is. Yes, please, of course.
Yeah, I think education is really important, and people need to know that in a decentralized world, no one force you to putting money into that rug pull project. So before you invest, you have to look at the project and understand it. That's DeFi, or that's decentralization. So, but on the centralized exchange part, given the market share and volume that we have, we do help to track rug pull funds to the best we can. There are blockchain analysis tools, and we have not in every case, but there were cases where we were able to track that and identify that person using using blockchain analysis. And sometimes just by identifying them, they return $30-something million from the rug pull to the users. Other times, like for example, the most recent even Bitfinex hack from 2016, they were able to catch the hackers like 5-6 years later. So working with law enforcement is important there, but fundamentally this cannot be prevented. You have to be responsible for your own actions.
Thank you, CZ. Well said. So second question that we've pulled out from the poll is, I think this, CZ, is probably for you again. Do we mind flashing on the screen, please? Will the BNB buyback from Binance continue?
Yeah, so we don't call it a buyback because our revenue is in BNB already. We don't sell the BNB into US dollars and then buy them back from the market. That doesn't make sense, right? So why do you sell it and then buy it back? So our revenue is mostly in BNB, and we will Binance but we changed the burning mechanism recently. So the stash, so the Binance team reserved 40% of the BNB during the ICO days. Those BNB have never been used. That technically belongs to the Binance team. Binance team we've never distributed that to any of the team members. We never sold that on the market. We've always used, we committed to burn all of that. But we changed the burning mechanism. Before, it was tied to the Binance.com revenues, which is a black box. We have competitors, etc., which makes BNB more centralized. So we said, let's find a way to not have our black box decision making potentially impact BNB in any way. We want to minimize the centralized decision making impact. So now we're using an algorithm that depends on how much transactions are happening on the BNB chain, and we're still burning that. So the stash comes from the previously allocated supply that Binance team controls, which we're basically saying that we will not use any of that, and all of that will be burned eventually. So, and the burning mechanism can be calculated in real time. I think there's a website called bnbinfo.com or bnbinfo.io that you can go and check in real time how many BNB is going to be burned. So we're making that process extremely transparent, but we're not taking BNB with us. Till today, the Binance team got 0 BNB from the ICO, from the issuance. So all of the BNB that we have today were earned through providing our services later. So this is a very fair token launch.
Thank you so much, CZ. So we do have a last question here they wanted to showcase, but really this is a question for all. So the last question someone asked is, what's Mo Sheikh's Twitter account? So I'm going to ask all of you, right? How can people follow you, your Twitter handle, starting with Mo, please?
Yeah, mine is just Mo Shaikh with an S at the end. So Mo Sheikhs, which is kind of a play on shakes. Yeah.
Milkshakes, right? There we go. Mo Sheikhs. Okay. And Jim?
Well, I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan, and long time ago, I entered Twitter, and it's Jimi Hendrix Live.
Wow.
Jimi Hendrix Live.
I love that.
I'm a field guitarist, by the way. I'm glad I pursued a day job.
Come on, I'm sure you can play next time. We'll give you 5 minutes, okay? And Sammy?
Yeah, mine is Crypto Maxi, but the T is a 7. So it's just Crypto Maxi, but the T is a 7.
So mine is if on the screen, if you see my name, if you turn the vertical separator into an underscore, CZ_Binance, that's my Twitter name.
I love that. I love that dimensionality, right? Amazing.
Yeah,
so that's
visual.
all the time. Yeah, exactly. So thank you all for speaking on this panel. Thank you all for listening to this panel. We hope you learned much more about the new BNB chain, building beyond. So thank you again, CZ of Binance, Jim Breyer of Breyer Capital, Mo Shaikh of Stealth Chain, and Sammy from BNB Chain. And thank you all for listening, and we'll see you around.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to be with you.
Yep.